we got talked into this by Doc, thanks, because he said, I'd like to hear what you have to say. And I said, I don't have anything to say. And he said, well, I'd like to hear what she has to say. And he said, we can do a joint effort on this. And I said, if we can do a joint effort, I'll let her come up here and talk, because she has the best story going. And we're going to kind of take you on a little cruise through how we got together, how we got to where we are now, and what we have in plans for the future. But bottom line up front, with our background and what we've done, we're not afraid of a fight. And we got to have a little bit of fight coming up if we want to save our country. And gentlemen, you know, what you guys have stood for, we can't let it go. That said, I'm going to take you, I know, got to have a SMEAC, right? And that's the way I originally planned this out and was going to build it, but she said, not. So guess who wears the pants in the family? She said I could wear them tonight. But that said, the Stardex of this whole mission set is how we're going to go through this. And we're living the dream. We really are. And this is something, you know, we're going to tell a story, but all of you have stood before there and you go, yeah, we heard a calling and we had to go serve, and we're doing what we have to do. And it's been a great honor to do this, and we're going to roll through a few things. And guess what? This is pre-Kuwait. This was, you know, hey, we were Navy Reserve unit. I've done my active duty time, then in the reserve, SEAL of this unit. And it's funny how we were training back then to push back on the evil empire that we saw it then, and how it's gone full circle now. But we were training pre-Kuwait. I was a cop in Lee Summit, having a blast, good times, and going after the wickedness in the streets and good stuff here. And I met this lady.
And it was a date, a blind date for Pearl Harbor Day that we were set up on. And then he, about a couple of months later, said, would you consider moving to Kansas City? And I'm like, well, let me think about it. I'll be leaving my family, a 21-year career. Let me think about that. I sent out 3 resumes. I had a job a week later in Kansas City. And I moved to Kansas City. 1 year later, we were married. And I worked at Toys R Us, and it was a great job.
And as we go through this story, I think it's, I got to give all the glory, credit, and honor to the Lord, because He put this all together, and He gave me the greatest wife that I could ever be. But life was good back then. I got to be on the SWAT team. We got to go to training. We got to go bust dope houses. And I got in a little bit of trouble on a talk show thing just recently because I called the people that we arrest on these kind of warrants dopers and scumbags. And it was in a very liberal city where this talk show was, and it's like, it's not proper to do that. And I'm like, you know, people that make methamphetamines and catch their own house on fire while they're making it, and then run into the attic to hide, and they sell the methamphetamine to your children, I don't think they deserve a good title. So dopers and scumbags they are. I'm just, that's the way it goes. But so you all know what you were doing on 9/11. You know, how many kids don't today? But this is, you know, boom, the towers hit, and our lives changed. You know, we knew our life was going to change. And this is after we came back from deployment with why we went there. And you all know the background. You all know the Marine barracks in Lebanon, the Pan Am Locker Bead, World Trade Center the first time, Cobalt Towers. You guys all know it. And as I talk to more and more veterans that need help still, you know, I'm meeting these guys that were at Cobalt Towers, and it's just, it's awe-inspiring to just talk to the guys. And thank you for bringing out people to tell their stories. This is the one, Senator Croft, Congressman Croft. It's like, legislator, this is the one that I'm like, we were, I don't know if you've heard his story, the colonel's story, but he was coming in from the northern way, And I was coming in from the southern route, and this is the largest amphibious group that was put together since Korea. And we, of course, all the captains of the ship, they wanted to sail all the ships and get them together and get a picture, and you didn't see all the smaller ones, but it was a great trip. Went over on that. I was the only frogman on that entire cruise. And you know how great that was? Hey, what do you want to do today? I think I'll work out, you know. But what a hoot. And, you know, supply chain management, getting a drink, getting the big ship, getting a drink. I ran into guys that were filling us up on the way over on those smaller boats. And sailor brothers that are in here, you know, it's all one team coming together to get everything over there. One team with the armor coming in the other way to get everything over there to go to war. And then one team that they let me write a few things on some ordnance that we were going to drop on the bad guys. So that was a hoot. But all the guys that come together to make this happen, it's just one team, one fight. We're all doing it for America, for America's national interest. And all you guys, ladies, you've served, you've done this, you've been there, you know the deal. And then once we got over there, it was pretty interesting stuff. The GOPLATs, the PPLs, petroleum pipelines, GOPLATs, Gulf oil platforms. You know the deal. Saddam Hussein was going to dump all that into the Persian Gulf so that it would bog down all of our ships, and we had to secure them before we invaded. So we brought over all our assets. Here was the boat I got to be on and get off and drive over on. And right here, this piece right here, this is something you just gotta, we're talking about one of the platforms that was being pushed out to sea. It had all the mines on. They were gonna rock the ships. Our guys captured it, and it's like, hey, we got this. What do you want us to do with it? You want us to blow it, or just, what do you want? So you know how the chain of command goes up, and it's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And they come back about a half hour later, dun, 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 dun. Don't blow it, we want it for evidence. Oops. That's the way things go sometimes, but what a hoot. You know, just, you guys know the story. We go get the mission done. That's what America does. People ask us to do our mission. That's what we do. One of naval history, Navy History and Heritage Command, the LCACs. Has anybody ridden on this flying boat? Yeah. Did you drive them? Did you?
Jarheads, man, we didn't get to drive that.
But what an adventure. And the only combat action, mission, deployment, I wouldn't call it combat, but support of the role that these guys got to play was getting us in to get some stuff out. And so it's just like, just the team coming together. We jumped on there, we went to one boat, we picked up some stuff, another boat. We went in closer, didn't get too close so they wouldn't be seen, take our little speedboats in, and it's what a great time. That was naval history, but if it were possible for man, it wouldn't have God in it. That's the theme I want to hit on this. But after the mission, you guys know the deal. It's like, hey, we did some good stuff, and got to debrief. Good friend of mine, he's retired. He was my mentor, and that goes back, you guys all had mentors. You know, everybody in here. It's so important to have that mentor to reach out. And what you're doing here to open up veterans to talk about it, he's now a 2-star retired admiral. We need to get him in here, get him to tell his story. He was my mentor. He's like, man, it's a tough day. It's like, I'm done. I just had a shower. It's good to go. Nice to be back on the boat. Coming back, there's nothing. And this, you all know this, there's nothing like coming back to the United States of America and seeing our history. You know, right there, Pearl Harbor, lining up. If you haven't come in with my brother Jarheads and my Squid brothers, you know, coming into port like that, manning the rails, it's a hoot. It really is. And the best part about this, you know who was waiting here in Hawaii for me when I got home?
I've got an interesting story for that one. So the Commodore asked us to go to dinner. So I said, oh, that sounds like fun. So we went to dinner that night. And Bill was lucky because Bill was going to get to jump off the ship because the teams were going to send him back to San Diego on an airplane. He wasn't going to have to ride back on the boat. So we go to dinner, and the Commodore, wonderful man Thomas, he said, hey, Barbara, if you'll make him get back on that ship, I'll give you a VIP suite on one of my other boats because you can't be on the same boat. And I'm thinking, I'd really like to do that. That would be a lot of fun. But my husband would be really unhappy. So I came up with the right words. Sir, if he ever travels with you again, I will make sure I take you up on that offer.
So yeah, it's just like, I know the saying for sailors. Sailors belong in ships and ships belong at sea. But, you know, we probably frogmen don't feel that way. Do we, frogman? Okay. Coming back home, great time. Got to meet a few people, shake hands with some people. It's what an adventure. Second trip over, though. Interesting. History is important for us to remember. This flag, 48-star flag. My grandfather took that to Europe in World War I. He was a meatball surgeon. Well, he was a surgeon, but he was a doc. And he used that to cover some of our lost soldiers. But I still have that flag. I took that flag with me to Fallujah, and it's paper thin. But we ran it up the flagpole and put it in the face of our adversary at that flagpole and brought it back down. Interesting to note, there is a certain person in this picture that's governor of Florida. Then he was the JAG attached to us at the time, and we happened to get a picture together. Yeah, so just a fun thing about that. Following that, went on to multiple more assignments. It's like, why don't you go down to Southcom AOR and be in charge of all the stuff we're doing down there for Spec Ops? It's like, cool. And they're like, the military newspaper people, they say, we want to take your picture. It's like, I don't want my picture taken. Well, you're the boss, you got to get your picture taken. So they did get 1 or 2 pictures of me discussing it, and it was a hoot. But then we went on to back again to Bahrain, and this wall is kind of interesting. We talked about, or I like to talk about negotiations. And this is at a Kuwaiti naval base. And at the beginning of the Kuwaiti war, when Saddam Hussein came in and took over their naval base, he lined up every single Kuwaiti naval officer and executed them in front of that wall. Every one of them. And you see it's all pockmarked there. So, very interesting. My boss at the time, when they said, we don't want you to have this base anymore, we're going to charge you a lot of money for this base. My boss, great guy, Todd Seneff, great captain, great leader. He came to this wall with some of their folks and said, do you remember this wall? Do you really want us to leave this base? And they're like, good point. Why don't you guys stay and we'll continue to let you have this base for free? So it's like, it's about the art of the deal, I guess is what you want to say on that. Continuing on, you know, I got the next tour as the commanding officer of the boat team that supported the active duty team, SBT-22. So we had these boats. What a hoot. These boats were my boats. And we got to zip up and down the Pearl River. And yeah, they got the BFAs on them because they didn't have a live fire range at the time. But we go with night vision goggles, and these guys could ride boats like nobody. This full speed ahead, nighttime, zipping around the canals. And yes?
Did they ever let you drive the boat?
Good question, sir. The guys that drive these boats, that fix these boats, that know how to keep them running, they call them SWCC, Surface Warfare Combatant Crewmen. These guys were fantastic. They had one rule though. Okay, I was the CO, right? Whose boats are they? They're mine. But their one rule was, don't let the SEAL drive the boat. It's like, these are my boats. Yes, sir. You don't get to drive. So, They said seals break things all the time. But that said, we were there in time to go in and do relief efforts for Hurricane Katrina. And Barbara reminded me of a story of Katrina that I kind of forgot till she refreshed my memory. Barbara had a story.
Sorry. Yeah, Bill was there during Katrina, and he would talk about how dark it was. And also, he had a bunch of these team guys with him on the boat, on the ship that had docked. And suddenly, the captain of the ship comes on the radio on the intercom for the whole ship and said, "Who built a fire on the dock? I need that officer in my office now." And Bill's like, "Oops." He said, "But sir, I was teaching them and letting them know that they were just doing their trade craft, you know? They're just out there building a little fire." That fire went out, but yeah, he got to have a good time with that one.
Called on the carpet. Yes, sir.
Are you the diver that went in the flooded government data center down there in Katrina?
I am not.
Okay.
I'm not, but it sounds like a great story. I'll tell you what, though, on the last day we were down there like, 2 weeks, going into houses. And on the last day we were there, the water's going back down. We went into one house. We found an elderly lady was in a wheelchair. She was still alive and still going, severely dehydrated. But we were able to bring out people like that on this recovery effort. It made all the difference in the world. You know, just to be able to help people like that, it was fantastic. Then on with the mission set, just, hey, we're working with other people, other allies, helping them do their mission set to keep their country free and safe, because it's a sovereign nation, and we're going to help them build up their military so they're stronger and they can defend their own borders. But we had a blast with that, and I got to work with a bunch of Army guys. It was like, good on you guys. Love you guys. On this, though, it's like, what happened in Afghanistan? Don't ever leave your swim buddy behind. You guys know that lesson. We don't do that. We don't do that. A good friend of mine, we got to go in, and I love this picture because my brother Marines, hey, guess who's first on the beach? Don't give me the first to shore guys. We are. Come on. We're first on the beach. We were there to watch your little rubber vehicles come in, and the beach was secure. And then
Separation. So once 9/11 happened, he wasn't home very often. And when he'd come home, it'd be for about 2 or 3 weeks, and his phone would ring, and he'd be leaving. So he'd leave me and the dog behind. So he said he was stationed in Pakistan at the time, working for a wonderful ambassador by the name of Ryan Crocker, and loved him, and said, "You would really like the State Department. You would really enjoy this." And I'm like, "Do you really think that's a good idea?" And he's like, "I think it's a brilliant idea. Put in your application." Well, 1 year later, I was swearing into the State Department and having the ride of my life.
There she is, swearing in, Department of State. Then she comes over here in DOD. Hey, what a team, you know? Come together, Department of State, Department of Defense, work on the same mission set. Our son can keep track of stuff back home. And how do you think that works out?
That didn't work out so well because DOS doesn't talk to DOD. Our orders never seem to come out in the same location.
We did have a great time when she was in Saudi Arabia and I was stationed in Bahrain. And there's a causeway that went in between, so we saw each other regular. And it's interesting. Can I tell the story about the causeway and why all of no, we can't tell that story. But
there was a diplomatic lane, so we got to zip through real quick, which was nice.
And you know what? Talk about strategic planners. Look at her. Look at that gleam in her eye. What's she have in her heart's mind? Execution. She executed the mission right there in that gentleman's face. Yeah, the pie in the face. So don't tell me she doesn't know the nature of the war that we are embarking on. I make that kind of in jest. Us military folks, we do know about the nature of war and the sacrifice. So it's a humorous part, but we got to do some stuff together, and we'd see each other on the weekends. That was kind of fun. We were living the dream, girl, weren't we?
Yeah, I was in Saudi Arabia. What very first assignment can kind of be a little bit on the tough side for a first assignment. You know, when you go to the State Department, they tell you real quickly that you'll serve wherever we tell you to serve. And here are your 4 potential list of places. You could go to Yemen, you could go to Saudi Arabia, you could go to Kyrgyzstan, or you could go to, let's see, where was it? Singapore. And I'm like, oh yeah, put Singapore on my list first, please. But where did I go? They gave me Saudi Arabia instead. But then DOD was nice. They're like, hey, Bill, she's there. Why don't you just go take an assignment in Bahrain? So in between, we get to come home for vacations, which was really nice.
And when she got different assignments, there was always cool events to go to. And it's all, you know, America's capital. If you haven't been there, you ought to walk the mall or take the mall. Just the stuff, the history and all that. One of our events, I got to go to the Navy War College, and then the State Department
Sent me to the War College, which I was in Afghanistan, and I was looking for my next assignment. And you go in and you bid. You know, you have to ask for certain assignments. And I'm like, I told Bill, I said, you know, the War College is on the list. He said, you should put in for it. I said, they'll never pick me. Not in a million years. You know, I'm a general services officer in the Foreign Service. They're not going to pick me. Well, a month later, after the bid list came out, I'm like, oh, I got the assignment. I was so excited. I woke him up in the middle of the night. He was stationed in Afghanistan because I saw it on my BlackBerry in the middle of the night. So I called him, hey, guess what? We're going to the War College.
Woo, that was the view outside of our place. We were staying at the War College. It's like, how great is that? But the State Department, it's like, hoo-yah, you got the good. This is kind of good. Look at the place we got to stay. The bad, this is what we're driving on. Yes, we shared the road with the donkeys and all the other stuff. And then the ugly. And number 1 rule, don't mess with the monkeys.
Yeah. Oh, I've got a story for that one. These monkeys looked kind of cute, right? They're kind of interesting, but they are really quite aggressive and vicious. We had a young officer thought it would be a good idea because he had this cute little monkey come up to his back door because he lived close to the mountains, you know, because there's mountains are right there. The State Department is very, very, very plain about don't feed the animals, don't touch the animals because of rabies, and we don't have vet care here. So, you know, avoid that and don't feed them. Well, he decided that cute baby monkey needed a banana. The next day, there were 2 monkeys. And then there were 4 monkeys. And then there were 8 monkeys. And they were becoming quite aggressive. He went on vacation. I figured, you know, by the time he got back, those monkeys would be gone. Well, those monkeys must have multiplied to quite a large number. They ended up busting into that house to get food. And they obviously cut themselves up because there was blood everywhere, you know, because they had to pull metal bars off of the windows because we got bars on our windows, right? Bust out the windows to empty out his kitchen. So it's like, don't feed the monkeys.
Again, fun times. It seems like the State Department, it's always an interesting event, something going on. You know, buying carpets, stogies up on your balcony. They give you nice places to stay. You can buy a local car.
Yeah, we lived out in the town, and we would drive back and forth to work every day. You know, it was pretty easy. Traffic there drives really slow. So even I could drive in Pakistan. It wasn't like a crowded city. And we talk about medical care. Well, I managed to break my arm when I was in Pakistan. And I'm going to tell you, the doctors there were pretty good. I was pleasantly surprised. I was impressed with British doctors and did really quality care. But you never know when you're overseas if something goes wrong. You know, you think about all these State Department people stationed all over the world, You know, medical care can be a little bit iffy.
Great game we just had, sir. I don't think that outcome was the same when I was in Afghanistan, but this year it was a good game. Occasionally we like to have you win. It is, and you know, it's about the brotherhood. And you see those men and women, you know, on the sidelines of the two service academies, that they're getting the best brains and minds and everything else together, and we can come together on a football field and play a game like that. That's inspiring. That's inspiring to me that we have that relationship. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard. Where are you, Coast Guard? But there you go. But just that relationship, and you know, you guys are this deep and 10,000 miles wide. How you guys do it? You guys are amazing. Love it. Duty, honor, country. This is where we were in Afghanistan, and you know, we thought, yeah, we'll work together. 9 months over there, and we saw each other twice. But what's that? But you know, for me, my left and right limits. Duty. What's the first duty of man? To fear God and obey His commandments. That's ecclesiastic. Honor. What's the first of the 10 commandments with a promise to you that if thou shalt honor thy father and mother? So for me, my priority list is God, families, and country. And you know, it's like if we keep our priorities in order, we can do great stuff. Team building, we talked about, hey, you know, sometimes you got to do the sucky job. You don't have to like it. I got all these guys here, really? And they got guns, and I'm talking to my ODA brothers that call in the captain and that's the deal. You do the job you're assigned. And my job was just to come into these functions and, you know, present whatever the ODA guys said we're presenting and sit there, and they've built me up the whole time. And it's just me, but okay, I got to sit there, and they're like, don't worry, brother. We got sniper rifles on these guys. If they do anything wrong, we got them. It's like, okay, after they light off about 4 or 5 rounds, got you. But you just do what you're supposed to do. And it's the enlisted guys. It's the guys in the trenches. It's the JGs, the lieutenants. It's those guys that are fighting. We got to take care of those guys when we get up into the higher spots. And I didn't bother covering up all these guys' faces because they're probably all dead now. But I won't go down that path. Second trip to Afghanistan?
Yep, we got a second trip. Bill got to come over for the State Department, and I got to move out of the shipping container I lived in for a year into an apartment because I actually was going to have my husband there for 6 months. So he came back, and we were in Afghanistan, and it was getting close to Christmas, and they said, Barbara, we need a management officer to go to Kandahar. Would you be willing to go to Kandahar? And I'm thinking, I don't want to go to Kandahar, you know. I really don't want to go to Kandahar. I really like my job, and I'm pretty comfortable in this apartment. And they're like, and I said, but I hate to tell people no. I'm not good at telling people no. So I said, I would be glad to, but I wouldn't go unless Bill could go. And that would absolutely not be acceptable under State Department regulations, because that means he would report to me. So 2 days later, like, yeah, we're sending you both. I'm like, well, what? But Bill, and they're like, we don't care. We don't have anybody to be there, and you've got to go.
That's how good she is at her job.
Oh, and there's a difference between Department of State and Department of Defense when we're overseas. Therefore, the nickname booze and bacon. Because the State Department allows alcohol in war zones. The Department of Defense does not. So I put a bottle of wine in my bag when I went to Kandahar, thinking, you know, I'll get a bottle of wine. Just the flight runs every day. I can keep my supply going. We got there, and the ambassador that was going on vacation had made an agreement with the general that the State Department would not be allowed to have any alcohol either. So I'm like, 1 bottle of wine to last me a whole month. That's going to be really a long month. It was actually starting to shut down. But we did eat Christmas. Christmas dinner was at TGI Fridays. And I loved their signs. The only TGI Fridays in the world you could carry a gun into the place. But that was our second trip to Afghanistan.
And go ahead.
Okay. Recently, I went back to Afghanistan for they pulled me out of retirement to do a 3-month tour. This is before the debacle that happened. So I was there for 3 months, October, November, and December. And I got to fly around on these helicopters. I love these helicopters. But if you're going to give me a choice between this one and this one, give me this one every day. This one was funny. They actually got to the point where they would run out and they would put a little step, because the step was so high to get into the helicopter, and I'd always have a heavy backpack on. I was always kind of like, I'm going to end up on my back. So these guys are great. And when it's just me or me and a couple people, they do some great flying. They like to have fun. Now, when it's loaded up with a lot of people, it's just very straight. But wonderful riders and wonderful people that were doing that mission.
Any 46 guys in here? CH-46s? Okay, that's the bird she loves. Counter-piracy business, what a hoot. No longer an 06, I get to go be a nug with a gun again. It's just a grunt, it's a fantastic time. Couple thoughts, it's humbling to be in America. To be in America. We are the greatest country in the world. We really are. But you know what? We are falling up. We are getting close to a precipice. We are getting close to a point where we might be in serious trouble. Couple thoughts. The border walls. We can secure that border. We can do that. We can do it on taxpayer dollars, because guess what? All our reservists do ATs. They can go secure the border. We did it in the Navy. Borders can be secured. You guys that have been to North and South Korea, we got a pretty good border, and it's pretty secure. I know there's secret ways in and out, but it's pretty darn secure. We can do this stuff. And again, failure is never an option. We need to remember that. Failure for us as military folks is never an option. We fight. We get it done. We win. We are never out of the job, out of the fight, and not afraid of getting my feet wet, feet dirty. It's too much fun. Let's drain that. We need to drain the swamp. And I'm getting a little political here. If we'll go fast, and I'm getting real political.
My last year with the State Department, I actually worked in what's called presidential travel support. So as a presidential travel lead, I would go in advance of the president and set up his hotels and his cars and his venues and anything that needed to be purchased, because when the president travels overseas, it's actually paid for by the State Department. The president does not have funds for that travel. He has no money. So it's all State Department. So I would travel in advance. Anybody want to guess how many hotel rooms I averaged renting on a visit? And we're just talking a one night. Thousands a lot. How about 650? And about 300 vehicles. Hard to find 300 open hotel rooms, because the thing is, we want to keep this as close hold as possible, because we don't want to broadcast that the President of the United States is coming to a country. So needless to say, it was always hard to get those contracts in place and keep it quiet. But an absolutely wonderful job, and I enjoyed it very much. This was the day that my retirement was announced to the president, that I was retiring. And he was very kind, he was very gracious, and he told me I was way too young and I was not ready to retire yet. And you're kind of like, what do you say to a gentleman that's older than you are, and actually the President of the United States, with that much energy? I'm like, thank you for saying so. I appreciate it, sir. And I kept on going.
And again, before, during, and after, we've had a really good ride. I've had a really good ride. Doing fun stuff afterwards. After you're done, the AAR, the debrief, and it's like a hoo-yah. Getting to do stuff like this, it's like, wow, we got some great technology and such great Americans. Look at the junkyard that is there in Iraq. It's like, what a hoot, though. It comes to question as I get into this thing, what my stance is on the First Amendment. Hey, you know, I'm about prayer, you know, and we got to pray. We got to pray it up if we got problems. First Amendment, yes, I stand on that. Also asked to here and there about my Second Amendment thoughts. Yes, Second Amendment. Any questions? And then a couple thoughts. You know what? I'm not a hero. I just served. I did what my country asked. But I know some guys that are heroes. And brother, I didn't put your picture up here, but I should. I thought I saw you tonight. It's like, you're one of my heroes. But yeah, I got some heroes. And you know, we can't forget our history. We got to not tear it down. There's too much sacrifice. You all know people here. We've lost too many brothers and sisters. We fought for this nation, and I'm not giving up on this country. I'm never going to forget. I'm never going to forget. I don't forget what you guys did. I was a youngster, but I don't forget how you got treated when you got home. I don't forget. Now, retirement? Barbara, what do you think about retirement?
Sound like a great idea to me.
You know, runs on the beach. We're going out to San Diego, going to baseball games. We got to get those Royals back in gear, though. We got to get that opened up. But we were having a great time, and people ask us, why in the world would you run for Congress? It's an impossible mission, especially starting as late as we did. January 10th, we were talking to people, well, what do we run for? January 10th. They said, well, it's impossible. Well, you know what? If it were possible, then you wouldn't know God was in it. So if God puts something on your plate, and he says, do something, and if you feel it in your heart, and you don't take that first step of faith, you're going to miss out on a blessing God has for you. You got to take that faith. And you know what? We're living the dream. And my wife is like, really? But we are living the dream. It's like, we're Americans. We're in America. We still got the American dream that we got to hold on to. The Navy was a fun ride. But the next step, next mission, let's go to Congress. Let's go to Congress to fight for you, to be your servant. That's what the life's been about. Our life's been about serving. We want to go to Congress. We want to keep fighting, keep serving you, because you guys are the mission set for me. And that said, it's like, send a SEAL to Congress. I'm not afraid of a fight. We're both retired. We can put full-time effort in this. We're not being fickle or funny about our belief in the Lord Jesus Christ. And you know, if you're atheist, that's okay. I'm still going to fight for you. I hope you'll find Christ, because we're seeing 22 veterans a day commit suicide. 22 a day. And I can't help but think it's because they've lost some of their hope. You know what? And people say that you got to have enthusiasm and have a voice and get on that and go after it. Well, you know what? For 33 years, I've kept my mouth shut. But something you might not know about me is I was a Mizzou cheerleader and the Mizzou Tiger, so I know how to bring it. I can bring some enthusiasm and fight. And that's what we're planning on doing. So I guess I just want to see if there's any questions. If not, I'll stick around and answer a few. But yes, sir.
Out of curiosity, since you're going to go to Congress,
Yes, sir.
Or just said Kansas,
Pardon?
Missouri.
For Missouri. But you know what? Your congressperson, I'm going to be running for the 4th District in the state of Missouri. Vicki Hartzler-Levin. I'm going to focus on the 4th District. But I'm also going to focus on Missouri, what's good for Missouri. And I'm also going to focus on the United States of America, because you're a congressman for the United States of America. That's not a hard thing. People that haven't been in the military, they don't get it. That let's make this simple. It's simple. It's America. I'm coming from Missouri, but yes, sir.
Well, if you're going to be senator, what are you going to do?
Congressman.
Congressman, what key
to Chicago and the East Coast?
You know, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. The fentanyl, coming from where? China? China, we need to remember, is our adversary. China unleashed a biological warfare agent and we're just sitting on our butts. So you know what we need to do? We need to, 1, hold them accountable. 2, secure the borders. We can do that. Stop that fentanyl from coming across the border. Stop the human trafficking, the trade, slave trade coming across, the trafficking in persons that's coming across that border. It's not a hard thing. We talked about it earlier. Secure the border. Yes, sir.
One more thing, given that basically Russia has launched a full invasion of Ukraine today, China might be bold enough that in this or next year they might try to invade Taiwan. If you become a congressman, what will you do so that America, unlike what we're doing with Ukraine, will actually try to help Taiwan be a free country and not be occupied by communist China?
That's kind of a, can I break that into a couple pieces? The question, let me make sure I got your question. Yes, sir.
Anybody has any questions, please let me know so we can get right in here.
Okay, let me break it into a couple pieces because it's a multi-point thing. And you want to know, let me see if I got this right, what we're going to do to push back on China so that they don't go rogue and take over all the property and continue building like they are to take over the world. Okay. It's like, and you also brought up Putin. Okay, number one, you guys know this. And bullies, if you don't stand up against a bully, they keep being bullies. You guys from Vietnam, my Vietnam War, you stood up against China in that war. They were bullies. Putin is a bully. He's trying to get his stuff. China, it's the Spratly Island chain. They have a new airfield there that they built out of the sea to launch planes to keep us make it that much harder for us to defend Taiwan. We just gave up the world's greatest runway ever, right at the throat of the Chinese in Afghanistan. We had the most marvelous runway there. And guess who has it now? Weakness is not going to help in standing up against the Chinese. They are just emboldened. And evil will keep biting away. A bully, if you don't stand up and fight and push back, they'll just keep eating away. And there's not a single military man, woman in here that wants to go to war. But every one of you rose your right hand, you took that oath, and you said, I'll lay it all out. And so many of our brothers haven't for our nation and our country. So we got to stand up against them. We need to hold them accountable for the virus they released. Why do you think it accidentally happened there? Do you think it was, look at the national interest of China. Look at their overpopulation. Look at the starvation. Look at the internal struggle. So we need to stand against it. Yes, sir.
Bill, good luck on your run for Congress in Missouri. I live in Kansas. I wish I lived in Missouri. Sorry. But I do got a question for you. SEAL Team is one of my favorite recorded shows every single week. I don't know if you watch that or not.
I do.
But I got to ask, as a SEAL Team guy, is that realistic of what you lived and what you did with the SEAL Team in Bravo? Question.
You know, it's like the old movie that came out a long time ago, SEAL Team, and they go on this one group of guys, got every single possible mission that could ever be done, and it's just that one group of guys. So do the SEAL teams do some amazingly good stuff? You bet they do. But at the same time, on the scariest, worst, deepest, darkest things that's facing America, when you have to have it done. And it has to be done quietly or whatever, or has to be done right. America sends in the SEALs. They send in our ODA brothers. They send in the best of the best. And they get the mission done. So, roundabout, send a SEAL to Congress. I'll fight for you. Yes, sir. Hey guys, I just really appreciate you having me here. Thank you tonight. Thank you for letting me pontificate and lift up my wife. It's like, but you know who we need to really lift up in this whole run is we need to not be afraid to stand on the Word of God and everything for Him, and keep the flesh out of it. And let's push the Word of God back into our country, into our nation, and let's do this. Thank you all so much.